I discovered that my wife had been unfaithful with my own brother, so I ended our marriage and severed all ties with my toxic family. Years later, life took an unexpected turn. I have been married to my wife, Rachel, a 32-year-old woman, for the past 6 years. Our relationship is incredibly strong. Like any couple, we've had our share of disagreements over the years, but we have worked through them and built a deep, loving bond. Everything was going smoothly until about 8 months ago, when my brother, Sam, a 28-year-old man, returned to our hometown. He had been living in Florida since the age of 18, but after his long-term girlfriend ended their relationship and moved away, he was left completely broke. The exact details of their split remain mostly unclear. Upon coming back, my brother claimed that his ex had been cheating on him with other women. I didn't know her well, but that explanation seemed far-fetched. Over their 5-year relationship, I had only met her on 3 occasions. Since Sam only came home for Christmas, staying just a few days, I saw her twice during those visits. The third time was when my wife and I briefly visited them for a day while on vacation 3 years ago. She never struck me as the type of person to lead a double life, and then suddenly abandon Sam with absolutely nothing. I attempted to reach out to her once, but I found that I had been blocked, so I decided to leave it alone. Sam moved back in with our parents, Greg, 55, and Jamie, 56. During his first month home, he struggled to find employment, so I suggested that Rachel might be able to assist him. Given her senior position at her company, I figured she could pull some strings. She did, and he was able to secure a job within her department, one that aligned with his career field. For context, my brother and I have never been particularly close. He has always been our father's favorite, while our mother lacks the backbone to stand up to my dad. Their favoritism wasn't overt, but rather shown through countless little instances. For example, when we each turned 16, we both received cars, except mine was an 8-year-old Dodge Neon, while his was a nearly new Mitsubishi Eclipse, just 2 years old. His athletic activities, training, gear, competitions, cost our parents thousands of dollars, some of which required traveling 6 or 7 hours away, yet they never hesitated to spend on him. Meanwhile, if I asked for just $50 to attend a local college's volleyball or basketball camp, they would give it to me, but acted as if I were demanding they construct an entire stadium just for me. What infuriated me most was when I was 17. I stayed out with my girlfriend, lost track of time, and ended up being 15 minutes late past curfew. My parents punished me by taking away my car for an entire month. The following year, my brother came home 2 hours past curfew, reeking of marijuana, and all he received was a stern lecture. So when he left for college and decided to stay in Florida, I wasn't exactly heartbroken. Despite our past, he started spending more and more time at my house. At first, I thought he might be trying to make an effort to strengthen our bond. But then, I started noticing that he and Rachel were becoming unusually comfortable with each other. They would have long, in-depth conversations and develop inside jokes. If I tried to participate, they would brush me off with, "Oh, just a work thing." When I brought it up with my wife, she reassured me, saying they simply had a lot in common and were collaborating on multiple work projects. The first major warning sign came about a month into this new routine. Sam was frequently at our house when I returned from work. Rachel and I have different work schedules. She works a standard 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. shift, whereas my hours are from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. When I asked why he was there so often, she always gave the same answer. We had some work stuff to do. 2 months ago, I noticed something that made me start questioning my own sanity. I always make the bed each morning before I leave, ensuring the open sides of the pillowcases face outward. That day, Sam had been over, joining us for dinner before heading back to our parents' house. When I got into bed that night, I immediately saw that two of the pillows had been rearranged, their openings now facing the middle. I asked Rachel if she had been in bed that day. She seemed slightly startled, but quickly said no, and asked why. I explained that the bed looked different from how I had made it in the morning. She insisted I must have been mistaken, saying no one had touched it. I secretly checked her phone and laptop, but found nothing incriminating. Then again, considering they spent 8 hours a day together at work and hung out afterward, why would they even need to text? I felt like I was losing my mind. 2 weeks ago, my parents invited us over for dinner. Everything was going fine, until I witnessed something that shattered my sense of security. Rachel was casually walking by when Sam reached out and lightly grabbed her arm. She turned to him, and he whispered something in her ear. Then, for just a second, they touched foreheads. Rachel quickly straightened up and kept walking, while Sam simply smirked at me before carrying on as if nothing had happened. I'm not naive. I know that this is a massive collection of red flags. I just didn't want to accept it. I have loved my wife since I was 21 years old. Hoping to clear my doubts, I planned a romantic weekend getaway to the city, where I intended to confront her about everything. I prayed that my suspicions were wrong. Update: you were all right, and my world has crumbled. We went on our weekend trip, and Friday night was wonderful. We had drinks, we danced, we were intimate. The next day, we had more activities planned, and for a moment, I almost chose to stay silent. I truly believed she wouldn't be capable of doing that with him while still being involved with me. But I was completely mistaken. As we were just about to begin our Saturday, I directly asked her if she was cheating on me with my brother. Tears welled up in her eyes as she admitted that she was. My heart shattered. I demanded to know why, and she tearfully apologized, saying she never intended for it to happen. She explained that they just connected, and before she even realized it, they had kissed. And then things escalated further. I asked if she had been sleeping with him in our bed before I returned home from work. She couldn't even look at me, turning her head away in shame. That was the breaking point for me. I walked out, taking nothing with me except my purse, and drove home alone, leaving her behind. A few hours later, she arrived via Uber, bringing the rest of my belongings. She tried to say she was sorry, but through my tears, I refused to acknowledge her. The next day, she packed a bag and checked into a hotel. When I told my parents what had happened, I discovered they already knew. They expressed regret over the situation and informed me that Sam had left the night before and might not return for several days. I was certain he had gone to stay with Rachel. That all took place 3 months ago, and now our divorce is nearly finalized. Rachel wasted no time securing an apartment, and Sam moved in with her. I only communicate with her regarding the divorce. Initially, she told me I could keep both the house and our savings, but I suspected that was her guilt talking. A few days later, she changed her mind, insisting we had to divide the house. I knew Sam had influenced her decision. Fortunately, I had already transferred all the savings into a new account, so there was nothing to dispute there. Just like that, nearly a decade of my life disappeared. She has no clue what she's gotten herself into. He's a narcissist and will eventually discard her. Throughout all of this, Sam has been incredibly cruel. Just days after I discovered the affair, he tagged me in a Facebook post. It was a selfie of the two of them, with her kissing his cheek from behind. The caption read, "Feeling loved." It was nauseating. I immediately logged out and deleted the app from my phone. About an hour later, he texted me saying, "Sorry, bro, didn't mean to tag you. No hard feelings. I hope we can still be close. You'll find your soulmate someday too." I blocked him instantly, on every platform I could think of. My parents haven't been any better. Initially, they acted as though they sympathized. But when I told them I was cutting off all contact with Sam and Rachel, my mother looked at me and said, "I'm sorry this happened. It shouldn't have happened this way. But your brother deserves to be happy too. One day, you'll meet someone, and we can all move on from this." That infuriated me. I showed her Sam's post and his text, expecting some kind of reaction. Instead, she dismissed it, saying, "Well, you shouldn't be on that stuff anyway." My father has remained completely silent throughout all of this. When I once asked for his opinion, he merely stated, "I agree with your mother," before leaving the room. That was the last straw. I am cutting them off as well. The house will be sold soon, and I plan to move to another state. I have no intention of telling my family where I'm going or when I'm leaving. In fact, I haven't mentioned my plans at all. I am simply finished with them. I sincerely wish them all the worst. Hey everyone, I know it's been 4 years since I last shared anything, but something major just happened. First, I'll update you on my life. I'm now engaged. It took extensive therapy for me to be able to open myself up again. At first, I attempted to start dating as soon as I settled here in Minnesota. I went on one mildly decent first date, but then I got a harsh reminder of just how unbearable some people can be. That experience made me swear off dating altogether, at least for a while. That's when I turned to therapy to work through the deep wounds left by my ex-wife and brother's betrayal, as well as the abandonment I experienced from my parents. That first year was rough. Then I met Emily, 37. Funny enough, she shares the same first name as my mother, LOL. But Emily is amazing. She's a chef, and she co-owns a successful restaurant and bar with her fraternal twin sister, Emma. I am beyond excited about our future together. But enough about me. Let me tell you about the sheer nerve my family had. About 9 months after I disappeared from their lives, I had remained completely no contact. I never disclosed my whereabouts to them, only confiding in a few close friends and a couple of cousins. One day, I arrived home to find a wedding invitation in my mailbox. It was for Rachel and Sam's wedding. Along with it was an obnoxious picture of them embracing in a sunflower field. Also included was a letter from my parents. The general tone of it was, "You need to forgive and move past this. We understand things didn't go as they should have, but we are family, and families work through problems." They even had the audacity to claim that Sam wanted me to be a groomsman, just like he had been at my wedding. What the actual hell? That letter ripped open old wounds I had worked so hard to heal. My therapist saw a sudden uptick in business because of it. Nowadays, I find the whole thing hilarious. But back then? Not at all. I didn't respond in any way. The only action I took was figuring out which extended family member had leaked my address to my ex-family, and promptly cutting them off as well. That leads me to the latest drama. Just last week, of all people, Rachel showed up at my apartment. Emily and I aren't living together just yet, but that's about to change soon. Rachel looked great. Too great, as if she had gone out of her way to appear her absolute best when she arrived. When she showed up, I asked, "What do you want?" She replied, "I just need to talk." I'm truly sorry for what I did. Sam and I are getting divorced. I found out he was cheating on me for our entire marriage. Shocking, right? I don't expect you to take me back, but we need to have a conversation and find closure for both of us. I blinked twice, unable to believe what I was hearing. She had completely lost her mind. Locking eyes with her, I stated firmly, "No, you don't get closure. You made your choice. Did you actually believe that the revolving door you married into, one that's had more traffic than a Holiday Inn, was suddenly going to shut down just because you put a ring on it? You're even more foolish than I thought. I forgive nothing. I want nothing from you, and I don't care. I'm in a better place now, and that will never change. You can go to hell." With that, I turned around, stepped into my apartment, and locked the door behind me. Right away, I contacted my landlord, who is the kindest elderly man I've known. Over these past 4 years, we've grown somewhat close, and he's well aware of my past marriage. Rachel was still lingering in the hallway, but a few minutes later, his 2 nieces, who help maintain the apartment complex, arrived and made it clear that she wasn't welcome there. They informed her that she was banned from the property, and that if she returned, the police would be called for trespassing. I had hoped that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. My work schedule is a pretty straightforward 9 to 5 now, which means I often stop by the restaurant in the evenings whenever Emily is managing. I don't interfere, just hang around and enjoy whatever little time she can spare. Over time, I've built strong friendships with much of the staff, many of whom are Emily and Emma's relatives. It's the kind of family atmosphere I had always wished for. The following night, while I was at the restaurant, Rachel walked in and sat down at my table. It was a quiet Tuesday, and Emily spotted her immediately. She came over to check on me, recognizing Rachel from the pictures I had shown her. Rachel extended her hand toward Emily, who merely glanced at it before turning to me and asking, "Want me to throw her out?" I replied, "Not yet. I have a question or two." Rachel perked up as if she was winning some sort of game. What an idiot. I asked her to explain what had happened between her and Sam. Honestly, I was just morbidly curious. She admitted that he had been carrying on at least 2 affairs with married women. No surprise there. Old habits die hard, I guess. This happened 2 years into the marriage. It was a really rough time for me, she said, her eyes rolling dramatically. I cut her off. You can't be that naive, though. Did you protect yourself financially? Or did he walk away with half of everything you owned? Rachel smirked and replied smugly, I stuck it out for almost another year, just to stash away some savings and liquidate a few assets. In the end, he walked away with only a small portion of what he could have. I asked, "And where is he now?" Rachel answered, "He had to move back in with your parents." Again, satisfied, I nodded and said, "That's all I wanted to hear. You can leave now." Emily turned to her and stated, "You heard him. Get out of my restaurant." Rachel tried to protest, "But I just want—" I cut her off. No forgiveness, no closure. I only wanted confirmation that my loser of a brother is back at home. Now leave. Emily stood up, pointing toward the exit. Rachel glanced around, realizing that the bartender and 2 members of the waitstaff were staring daggers at her. With her tail between her legs, she got up and shuffled toward the door. Emily started to say, "And if you ever come back?" Rachel interrupted, Yeah, I get it. Cops. Trespassing." Once she was gone, nearly everyone in the restaurant came by to check on me. It was both heartwarming and a bit embarrassing. My future in-laws, whom I absolutely adore, called me that night. They insisted I stay with Emily for a few days just to be safe. It was an incredibly thoughtful gesture. I've never had a family look out for me like that before. Rachel never tried to reach out again, and hopefully, she never will. Hey, everyone! I didn't expect this, but I have another update for you all. First, a bit about me. I'm now a 41-year-old father of 2, a 6-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter. Emily and I are doing great. These days, I work part-time as an office manager for the restaurants, while also being a semi-stay-at-home dad. 3 years ago, Emily's cousin bought into the business, allowing us to open a second location. It's been a lot of work, but with the 3 of them actively involved in managing both sites, we've been able to maintain success while also giving each of them some personal time. It wasn't exactly planned, but I'm fairly certain Emily ended up pregnant because I stayed with her after my in-laws insisted on it following my last post. They now joke that they always wanted to be grandparents, and that this was all part of their grand scheme. Now for the update. After Rachel managed to track me down, I figured it was only a matter of time before either my parents or my brother showed up. It didn't happen right away, though. As time passed, I let my guard down a bit, feeling reassured by the strong support system I had around me. Eventually, I rejoined social media. I kept my distance from most of my family, including my extended relatives, but I wasn't under any illusions. I knew that if they really wanted to, they could find me. It wasn't until after our first child was born that I finally received a message. It was from my father. His message contained a half-hearted apology, some vague mention of forgiveness, and an inquiry about my daughter. Initially, I was just going to block him, but then I noticed something in his wording, the implication that my child was somehow his granddaughter. I found it insulting, so I responded by saying that I wasn't their son, and therefore my children had no connection to them. If they wanted grandchildren, they should encourage Sam to step up and do what he's best at. After that, I blocked him, but he went ahead and created new accounts and tried to contact me for a while. I always ignored or deleted his messages or requests. This brings me to the recent drama. There were constant messages, requests, and so on, urging me to get in touch. Some of them were tearful, about missing out on the grandkids and wanting to make things right. Honestly, I couldn't have cared less. I had no intention of ever including them in my life again. Then came the more surprising part. Sam reached out to me. His messages didn't say much except that he really wanted to talk. After about 3 weeks of this, I agreed to a Zoom meeting. Just me, no kids. As soon as we started, they began asking to see the children, but I firmly refused. They already had 3 grandparents, Emily's mom, dad, and grandma. At that point, I was starting to feel like this was about something else. Sam looked in bad shape, and my parents appeared old and exhausted. As we talked, they began apologizing for everything that had happened, even Sam. He admitted he was wrong and expressed regret about losing his brother, which I found laughable. Then Dad took over and went on his usual spiel about being a family and looking out for each other. When he was done, I just stared at them and said, "Is that all you've got? I'm leaving." That's when they yelled for me to wait, and the facade fell away. The real reason was about to surface. Apparently, Sam had been dealing with health issues for the past couple of years. His kidneys were failing, and he needed a transplant. That's why they had been so persistent in trying to get in touch with me. A family member was the most likely to be a good match. I asked them bluntly, "So, this is why you're contacting me? You want me to save him after everything that happened? My wife wasn't enough for you. Now you want my kidney too?" Dad snapped and said, "Stop being like this. All that was a long time ago." He started choking up and crying as he continued, "I get it. You hate us, but he's going to die if he doesn't get a transplant soon. Is that what you want? I know you think he wronged you in the worst way, but please, can we just put that aside? Just this once?" I went silent, waiting to see if they would say anything else. Eventually, Mom started talking. "We're sorry for all that happened, but we have some big problems. With his medical bills and not being able to work, your dad and I are getting older, and we've got our own struggles. We've got a lot going on. We need you to come back to Missouri to see if you're a match, and we could really use your help, or we might lose the house." "So you need my kidney and my money?" I asked. She replied, "Don't put it like that." Sam then pleaded, "Please, just come home. I need my big brother. I don't want to die. Can you just come and see if you're a match? If not, we'll never contact you again." I told them I needed to think about it, do some research, and I'd let them know by tomorrow. I ended the call, and went to speak with my wife. She told me she supported me completely, no matter what I decided, and then asked if we should all travel as a family or if it should just be her. I said no to both. This was something I had to do on my own. The next day, I informed my former family that I would get the lab results here in Minnesota, and if I was a match, I'd come and we could discuss everything else. About a week later, I received the results, and it turned out I was a perfect match. I agreed to return to St. Charles. By the time I arrived, Sam's condition had worsened, and he had to be admitted to the hospital. This gave me some relief about avoiding any social meetings, as I had no interest in doing anything with these people, especially since every time they had a spare moment, my parents would ask if I had thought about helping them with their financial issues. They managed to stabilize Sam, and I went to meet with the doctors who would perform the transplant. They explained everything to me, and I told them I wanted to have this conversation with everyone. We all went to Sam's room, where my parents were already present. The doctor began by explaining the situation. Sam only had about 6 months left without a transplant. They went over the procedure with us all, making a big deal about how perfect a match I was, emphasizing that the chances of finding another donor like me were extremely slim. They said we needed to schedule the surgery as soon as possible. I then walked over to Sam, took his hand, and looked into his big brown eyes. I said, "Did you hear that? I'm a perfect match. Essentially, I'm the only person who can save you, and I'm not going to. You're the most vile, narcissistic piece of garbage I've ever known. I only came here so you would know that the one person who could save your life is the one person you've wronged the most. And now, you're paying for that with your life. You're going to die. Make peace with it." Sam broke down in tears, and my parents turned to confront me. The doctor and nurse stood in complete shock. I looked at my parents and said, "Don't even speak to me, and don't you ever ask me for anything again. The only money I'd ever spend on you would be for your funeral, on the condition that you be cremated and that I get your ashes. Then I'll scatter them in the dirtiest public restroom I can find." With that, I left the room and never looked back. Now I'm back home, my real home, surrounded by my real family, and I couldn't be happier.